On to the slide number 8. So again, I think one of the things that we talked about was that up until now we have done reports which were named as Top 50. And last year I know that there were a significant amount of debate between the steering committee members in terms of ranking and selecting the cities, and 50 emerging cities or 50 list of 50 just wasn't hard enough because it became extremely difficult when you look at the tail end of that last 10. They are equally good, so one of the things to just do justice and highlight to the client community, to the service provider community, the fact that there are significant number of destinations and locations that are very credible, and then they are there to be able to service the requirements of the client market very effectively. We expanded the list to 100. This, so today is the day when we are basically announcing the results of our top 100 report. Also, this year, we have been able to see 2 cities which were emerging cities graduate essentially to now be emerged cities. And the first one who has made it to the emerged list, it is definitely not simple graduating from an emerging to emerged, but Cebu in Philippines has done extremely well to make it to the emerged list. Now that is a journey that Cebu City, for example, obviously it has been on a list for at least the last couple to 3 years, but it is a journey that Cebu City traversed at least over the last 5 years, where the city made very, very conscious decisions on what were some of their strengths and how they can actually put more focus on skilling the talent pool out there, and how do they put more focus on trying to attract talent from the provinces around Cebu. So I think that kind of effort is what probably made Cebu be in the emerged. The second city that has made from the emerging to emerged is Shanghai in China. Now, most people would actually say that Shanghai is a great city, it's a big city, it does a significant amount of of outsourcing. It is so, but at the same time, the maturity of Shanghai still wasn't enough up until now in terms of being able to do as an emerged destination. Most of the outsourcing that happens in Shanghai, even though they may be from clients from the U.S., it is for clients from the U.S. who are in China, and so that's the outsourcing that happens within China itself. But I think right now, this year, we have been able to see, and this is based on some of, so each and every city that is there on the list of the emerged, this is, and any of the promotions from the emerging to emerged are based on a significant amount of primary research, essentially, and assessment. And I think we were really impressed this year in terms of the strides that Shanghai has been able to make. And it's not just the Shanghai metro itself. There are now pockets of locations around Shanghai that have come up very, very well in terms of tech parks and things like that, where they have significant tax incentives, very good infrastructure, and enough companies around there. And even we have seen establishment of education or training institutes within those tech parks itself. So I think Shanghai is a great destination, and hopefully we'll be able to do extremely well as we go further. Coming into the, so if you look at the list in terms of the top 10 in slide number 9, other than the addition of Cebu and Shanghai, we have had few changes in terms of the ranking. Bangalore still remains the #1 by a small margin, though, and we have seen Delhi and Mumbai change places this year after being ranked, consistently for the last 3 years. And I guess based on some of the trends that we are seeing, and some of the lack of initiatives that some of these cities are not taking. So I guess so just as a caution, based on the results from this year and the trend that we have seen, Bangalore would have to do something much more to be able to maintain its ranking at #1 for next year. The other thing that really has impressed the research team quite a bit has also been Manila. In fact, the client base is extremely pro in terms of BPO, and this is not just about customer service, because customer service Philippines is the #1 choice for clients. But beyond customer service, we are now starting to see a significant number of clients also preferring Manila or Philippines in general for BPO beyond the customer service as well. So we expect to see, we expect to see a significant amount of growth for Philippines in BPO and also for IT in the coming year. So I think these two cities need to be probably watched over the next year. Bangalore in terms of whether it will be able to retain its #1 place, and Manila as to how well it could potentially do. Moving on to page number 10, which is the top 50 emerging cities. Again, going through the list, the presentation will be available after this webinar. But essentially, some of the significant cities that made the move. Colombo moved up 7 places, so it is a great destination for accounting and financial stuff. And then we see Russia, which was kind of on a flattish trend over the last few years, has started to see a significant interest come up in the last 12 months. And then again, Singapore was kind of out of favor because of the cost, but Singapore has done extremely well in terms of being able to identify a pool of skills that it either has brought into Singapore or a pool of skills that they have identified which can be brought into Singapore when needed. But they're doing very well in terms of biotech. And again, I think Montevideo has done extremely well. We have seen a lot of pharma, a lot of engineering services, BPO moving into Uruguay, into Montevideo. I guess minor disappointments have been Vietnam has really not done anything substantial, even though the potential is significant. And then there are some of the Indian cities, again, who haven't done much. In fact, in general, if you look at it from a country perspective, India is probably a disappointment, where the Indian provinces or states and Indian cities have really not done much in terms of trying to make conscious effort in terms of skills enhancement in talent development, whereas the other countries are coming in from a little bit of a disadvantage to India and have done a much more concerted effort in terms of ramping up their talent development. Going into slide number 11, in terms of the next 40 outsourcing cities. So this is the list of cities that is beyond the 10 emerged and the 50 emerging. But just because they're on the next 40 doesn't mean that these cities don't have significant capability to do a certain amount of KPO, BPO, ITO. They do. It's just that the scale at this point that you can reach in these cities is limited. But for example, if you go towards the end of that list, there are places even in Philippines in terms of Iloilo and Bacolod City, for example, where you can still ramp up BPO operations, maybe the F&A stuff, and you can do certain customer service stuff and still ramp up into operations of few thousands, basically. Then again, you have places like Mysore, who don't make the top 50 emerging, but at the same time they are very close to like Bangalore and have great colleges, and there are companies, even for example, there are certain top IT companies that have opened up their training centers out there. I think these cities are absolutely great. For example, Medellin over here on that list, 8 in terms of the next 40 outsourcing cities, has got a great infrastructure. I think one of the countries that is probably perceived and rated the least by the entire client base or the service provider, and which is very, very far from where the truth is probably Colombia. Whether you look at Bogota, whether you look at Medellin, or whether you look at Cali, I mean, these are great cities. I mean, I think people have to kind of shed completely their image of a country that was what it was 10 years ago. And I think right now, this country, anyone who visits this country and sees operations of clients would never ever imagine that this was a country which was very different 10 years ago. I think moving on to slide number 12. This is where I would like to talk a little bit about the point of scale resistance. The point of scale resistance really is a measure which basically tells as to what is the scalability of a place and the ability of that place to sustain operations and growth over the years, essentially. And the team has come up with a methodology that considers a significant number of factors in terms of the low demand, low employability, high competition, high risk, and the financial feasibility to look at a country's scale resistance, basically. For example, for Philippines, it's over 7,500, and for India, it is about over 25,000. Now, what this basically indicates is that these are the numbers. If you want to go and establish an operation in a given city beyond these numbers, you will start to hit some resistance in terms of you will see higher attrition, you may see salaries escalation, you may see quality drop, things like that. And so what this basically says to that particular country or the city is if they want to achieve higher level of point of scale resistance, or if they want to give a client, a service provider, assurance that they can actually grow the operations to much larger numbers, they need to put a much more concerted skill and talent development programs in place. Now, India is really not improving on the POSR. For example, Philippines' point of scale resistance score has increased over the last 1 year. India's has really not shown much of an improvement in terms of the point of scale resistance. And there are countries, for example, Costa Rica, with a population of just 4 million, basically, and they have a point of scale resistance that is pretty impressive compared to some of these larger locations. Moving on to slide number 14. Now, this is the client markets were really under pressure over the last few years, and what we see in the last 6 months, even though the US is still, the UK is still a pretty slow market, but we have seen a significant jump in outsourcing, and that comes in from the client's confidence that the economy is at least stable, may not be improving, but then also the pressure that they have to reduce cost and they have to generate certain money to be able to put into technology and to put into improving the quality of service. And so we expect that to continue over the next few years, which will result in outsourcing revenues to increase significantly. Now, slide number 15, you can see technology and the global economy has had a very good correlation. And so we believe that as economy is starting to see some stability and improvement, technology is something that will see a significant amount of investment. And any of the technology-enabled services will also see a significant rise. Moving on to slide number 16. In terms of looking at the service delivery landscape, the present and the future. I mean, the past, in fact, was very, very few locations were the favorites because it wasn't because those were the only location, but it